Hi there, I'm WTOL11 Chief Meteorologist Chris Figgers. It is so great to have you along on this weather impact alert day as we are monitoring the risk of strong to severe storms. They're going to be arriving very late tonight, and we understand it's going to be near or past many people's bedtime, so we want to get you ahead of the game on this one. And we appreciate you joining us here on WTOL 11 Plus, and I'm going to encourage you to have multiple ways to get warnings tonight, including you can go and pull that phone out, scan that QR code. That's going to take you directly on your mobile device to our WTOL 11 weather app, where you're going to get linked up to our hour-by-hour forecast, interactive radar, 10-day forecast, and direct links to videos we send to you about the incoming severe weather. So what's going on with this situation here? Very complex situation where we've got warmer and more humid air now nudging into the region, and you felt it through the course of the day today, the higher levels of humidity and the storm threat that's going to be on the rise. Now, a couple areas we're watching. Storms have been really strong north of this warm front, where the wind shear has been a little bit more robust in the atmosphere. Now, where we're going to see any storms that develop that will impact our area, it's going to be just along and south of this warm front, where that air is very unstable. But the question is, how much of these storms will bust through that cap or that lid on the atmosphere and allow some strong to severe storms into the area as we go through tonight? So storms, they are set to return, and here's the line of some strong to severe storms that are making their way through central Illinois. And a few of those storms, they could bring the risk of some large hail, damaging winds, and even the risk of tornadoes. So what does it stand like right now in our area? An enhanced risk that is a level 3 out of 5 for severe weather, mainly from the Toledo Metro. There's I-75, how it mirrors I-75 and west. That is an enhanced risk of severe weather. Bottom line, everyone is under the risk of at least strong to severe storms tonight. So that is going to be the big weather impact. Our alert late tonight that's going to carry into early Friday morning. Severe storm risk, and you felt it, the steamy, muggy weather, and that severe storm threat is going to be really peaking or arriving at the earliest sometime after 10 p.m. Could even be for some areas closer to midnight or later. So when are we looking at that risk? And again, that's the earliest we could get a storm west of Toledo. It'd be far later than that for Toledo and areas to the east, and that may carry us until about 3 a.m. What are the impacts? Large hail, gusty winds, and a possible tornado. We call that all hazards are possible. And what you need to know, well, joining us right here on WTOL 11 Plus is a great way to stay connected with the latest weather information. Have our weather app downloaded. Multiple ways to get warnings, because this could be coming in while you're headed to bed, or if you want to rest easy, to know that you'll have several ways to be alerted if storms would arrive. 10 p.m. to 3 a.m., the hazards, gusty winds, large hail. Could get some hailstones that are well over an inch in diameter. And some indications, if these storms really kind of punch through that cap, there could be hailstones up to ping pong or golf ball size, mainly west of Toledo. And still some storms that could show some rotation. The environment has some twisting and turning, especially as we go after dark tonight, where we could see the potential of some of those storms. All right, so we've got Doppler radar here. We're going to pull this on over. We're going to be talking about some of these storms. They're going to make their way into northwest Ohio. What do we see right now? There's an active tornado warning. This is in the state of Illinois. These are an idea of the storms, though, that we may be tracking that move into our area. This is a tornado warning that was just recently issued. That's just outside of Decatur, Illinois. That is for the potential of rotation detected by Doppler radar. And there are several of these storms that are showing up just north of this squall line that are up there toward central Illinois. This one in particular, and this is what's concerning about these storms. This is a severe thunderstorm warning in east central Illinois that has a destructive tag on it, which means that it either has very large hail or potentially winds up to 80 miles per hour. And it does appear that the high winds are going to be the big risk with this one. Indications are winds of 70 miles per hour. And get this, baseball-sized hail as wide as that destructive tag on it. This is in east central Illinois, tapping into an area that is very unstable with the air mass that could be producing massive hailstones, indicated to be potentially up to baseball-sized hail. Another severe thunderstorm warning that is well west of us, that is for the potential of some large hail and some damaging winds. So how is this all going to tie together? Warm front sweeping to the north. There's the storms developing off to our south and to our west, and those storms are going to be making their way a little bit closer to our area. So do we have any active warnings or alerts? Not at the present time. Tornado watch up there across parts of central and western Michigan. That tornado watch extends back into the Chicagoland area, extreme western Indiana. And there's an area that's being monitored very close here in northern Indiana that potentially, as we go through the 9 o'clock hour, could see an extension of that tornado watch at this point. Now, the conditions are ripe. If we could bust through that cap, the potential is we may be seeing some strong tornadoes in this area across northern Indiana that would make their way close to northwest Ohio. So have close eyes on that. Now, I mentioned it. There's an area that's being watched very close. Meteorologist John Birchfield is alongside me. I'm going to bring him in a minute. He's going to take us through the hour-by-hour details, but damaging winds, large hail, and the potential of tornadoes across northern Indiana. So a little bit more locally, what are we looking at with this enhanced risk? It is areas west of I-75. That is a level 3 out of 5. And if you're east of I-75, a level 2 out of 5. And really don't fixate on the numbers. We have the risk anywhere in northwest Ohio and southern Michigan of the potential of some damaging winds and large hail. It was a warm and humid evening, and we felt it across the area. Highs that jumped up into the 80s and over downtown Toledo. The sun is going to be setting, and temperature-wise, we're not going to drop that much at all. Those dew points are very high into the 60s, and we're going to be seeing those winds that will pick up out of the south, continuing to pump that warmer and more humid air into the picture. And speaking of higher levels of humidity, you're going to see that warmer air that's just off to our west as well, from 81 in Toledo to nearly 90 degrees still out there towards Chicago. That is a good measure of how much instability that we are working with in the atmosphere. We're going to be here with you through the night tonight. We appreciate you joining us here on WTOL 11 Plus. Let's bring in meteorologist John Birchfield. And John, we're going to have team coverage on this one. Specifically, I want you to take us through eventually the hour-by-hour outlook on when we need to be alert and when we're going to be all in the clear. John, take it away.
Yeah, Chris, thanks for setting the stage. The heat and humidity, of course, today providing those ingredients for severe weather later this evening. And I do want to point out also we're live on YouTube. So if you have any questions or comments that you'd like answered, be sure to leave those on our YouTube channel and always streaming on WTOL 11 Plus as well. Now, as Chris mentioned, no active weather alerts as of now, but we have all the ingredients for a potential strong to severe storm setup. And I do want to highlight the weather impact alert day that is going to be in effect this evening and through the first half of the night. Now, it's not going to last a ton of hours. However, I understand this is an inconvenient time to get severe weather, so make sure that you have those weather alerts turned on and the volume up on your phone or tablet device. We are expecting those storms to roll in towards the Toledo Metro between about 11 p.m. and 1 a.m. and many areas are going to continue to see storm activity from 1 to 3 a.m. and that is especially locations then east of I-75 as these storms race from west to east. So a fairly narrow window of severe weather that we're expecting from about 10 p.m. until 3 a.m. and what's amazing is by tomorrow morning the sky is going to clear. In the wake of this system, we're actually going to see fairly tranquil conditions to start off the day on Friday. Sunshine is going to be returning. Temperature is still going to be very warm. And yes, there will be some of that humidity in the air. This is a type of weather setup that you may think more along the lines of June or even July, and it certainly has that summertime feel. So I do want to get into the hour-by-hour forecast so you can plan what's on tap for this evening and tonight. Now, Chris pointed out the storm energy. There is a lot of instability in the atmosphere, essentially rising warm and humid air that has resulted from the heat and humidity today. Now, that rising warm air fuels thunderstorms. It can also fuel some strong damaging winds and also causes updrafts that produce hailstones. So a number of weather ingredients that could result from the heat and humidity. Now, there is going to be a cold front sweeping through, and that is currently situated across Lake Michigan as these storms race through across the lake, moving from Milwaukee towards western Michigan and northwest Indiana as well. So I want to set the hour by hour into motion. Now, you'll notice those brighter orange colors. Those are even higher amounts of instability that exist where temperatures and humidity were essentially off the charts. Chris pointed out some locations in Illinois that were in the 90s today and had even more humidity than us. There is still plenty of instability to work with here at home, though, so that is not going to be a limiting factor whatsoever. By about 11 p.m. through midnight, these storms are going to be rolling towards Hillsdale County, and I think that is where the risk of severe weather is actually going to be the greatest, is north and west of the Toledo Metro. Locations like Hillsdale, Lenawee, and Williams counties stay on high weather alert. These storms are going to be arriving in your neck of the woods before midnight, and the ingredients are frankly the strongest north and northwest of Toledo. Now, nobody is off the hook from severe weather, and there is still the risk of severe storms for our entire viewing area. By about midnight to 1 a.m., those storms are going to be entering and pushing towards the Toledo Metro, and then after 1 a.m., they're going to be racing to the south and east of the Maumee River. Now, there is still a little bit of uncertainty uncertainty regarding the model data and how well this line of storms holds itself together. But because of the instability in the atmosphere and because of the jet stream or the wind shear that Chris pointed out, we certainly have all the ingredients to be concerned about this storm setup. As we advance the clock through about 2 to 3 a.m., those storms are going to be moving south and east of Toledo, and eventually there is going to be somewhat of a weakening trend as those clear off towards the lakeshore. But there is still the risk of severe weather through the entire course or the entire trajectory of this storm system. And of course, behind that line of storms, well, that'll take care of all the instability in the atmosphere, and that'll also give you a sunny and tranquil start to your Friday morning. So I want to zoom in a little closer to home as we hone in on the timing of this. Not expecting any sort of precipitation for the next hour or two at least. Here's the clock at 11 o'clock p.m. This data actually has most of the area totally dry, even through 11, but up towards Hillsdale County, that is one of the first spots that is expected to see thunderstorms, and there's a strong likelihood that they are going to be severe at that point. Right around midnight, that's when we're expecting these storms to arrive in northwest Ohio, including the Toledo metro. Now you'll notice it's a pretty narrow band of thunderstorms. They could be intense, but it's not going to last super long. Only a couple hours of thunderstorms, and then once that leading edge pushes past you, the severe threat is going to quickly diminish behind that system. So it is possible that if you live up towards Hillsdale and Lenawee counties, we can give you that all clear a little bit sooner than others. Now by 1 to 2 a.m., areas south and east of the Maumee River are going to be affected by this, and then by 3 o'clock a.m., it is very likely that all of northwest Ohio and lower Michigan is in the clear as those storms move off towards the I-71 corridor in eastern Ohio. Now overall, we are monitoring areas west of us and keeping an eye on radar because the computer model data, it is helpful to have, but ultimately radar is the best guide in a situation like this and keeping an eye on things and how they evolve and how they develop. Now, as Chris pointed out, a tornado watch is in effect for western Michigan and into central Michigan, but nothing locally as of now. All of northwest Ohio and southern Michigan, though, still being considered by the Storm Prediction Center and monitored for potential developments in this storm system. But overall, if I had to pinpoint where the risk is greatest, I would say north and northwest of Toledo is where the storms are likely to be the most intense over the course of the evening, but nobody is totally off the hook. Now, eventually, as they work towards eastern Ohio, those storms are going to be weakening, but we still do have a pretty substantial risk of severe storms, and the SPC, or the Storm Prediction Center, still keeping a very close eye, especially for areas that were not outlined in that initial watch. So we're talking northern Indiana and southeastern Michigan. It is very likely that that watch will get extended if these storms do hold together. Now, there is still some uncertainty, as Chris pointed out, the cap in the atmosphere, or this layer of warm air that essentially inhibits that rising updraft in the storms. How long will that remain in place, and what role will it play in the development of these storms? Time will tell, and we'll keep a very close eye on things. But as far as watches and warnings are concerned, a number of severe warnings right along the Illinois and Indiana state line, including parts of the Chicago metro that are currently seeing severe thunderstorm warnings. Milwaukee saw some powerful storms that rolled through earlier. Lots of thunder and lightning. The worst of these storms, though, are actually over Lake Michigan right now. So folks who live in western Michigan, they're going to be seeing these storms barrel through, and they are very likely to be severe. Of course, the southern side of things that Chris pointed out, producing some strong damaging winds as well as some large hail. And boy, lots of lightning and thunder with this one. In fact, Doppler radar can pinpoint how many lightning strikes have been detected. And this cluster of storms, the number is close to 900 right now. And these are essentially all over the water. So folks who live in Milwaukee and parts of Wisconsin, these storms are departing their area. But if they were to look out their apartment or their house window looking towards the lake, it would be quite the light show from Mother Nature. And all that activity that is heading towards western Michigan. Areas like Grand Rapids have the potential to see not only the strong damaging winds, but also some large hail up to 2 inches in diameter possible for western Michigan. And this is why the Storm Prediction Center has said, hey, western Michigan needs a tornado watch because all of this activity is moving in their direction. And Chris, kind of a wait and see type event as far as us here. Of course, these storms living up to expectations so far, but it's arriving maybe a little later than originally projected, but we're still looking solid with that 10 to 3 time frame.
We are solid in that. John, hang with me here for a minute too as well. So let's discuss the atmosphere that these storms are going into. So we've got an extreme amount of instability. A lot of people watching right now are very avid weather watchers. We call that CAPE, convective available potential energy. That's reaching a threshold of 4,000 joules per kilogram. So that's a lot of storm energy. And if you're just a weather novice, that just means there's a lot of heat and humidity in the atmosphere.
Yeah.
What else is kind of factoring into this? Because we've got that lid or that cap that's going on as well.
Yeah, and I do want to point out, oftentimes we associate instability with, the daytime heating, the rising warm air associated with sunshine. And a lot of viewers have asked, well, are we still going to have that instability even if these storms don't roll in until 10 p.m. to midnight? And the thing is, we will. It might not be quite as pronounced as some parts of Illinois have experienced, where these storms arrive during the peak heat of the day. But there is still going to be an abundance of instability. So that's not going to be a limiting factor whatsoever. And we do still anticipate there will be plenty of instability. Of course, there is going to be some inhibition that occurs with the waning of the sunshine and the loss of that daytime heating. But oftentimes that takes a number of hours to really kick into full gear, especially this time of year when you do have the warmer and the muggier air mass. So keeping an eye on that. As far as the wind shear or the turning is concerned, there is plenty of that to go around as well. I do want to point out also that, we look at the atmosphere in particular because that does play a big role in how the storms are going to evolve and the storms are going to develop. But we talked about the capping in the atmosphere. And actually the Wilmington office of the NWS down in southern and southwestern Ohio, they launched a special weather balloon sometimes during severe weather events to get an idea essentially of a vertical profile of the atmosphere. So basically these weather balloons take measurements at various points in the atmosphere, such as the temperature, the dew point, the wind, and that paints a three-dimensional picture of the atmosphere. And at least in southern Ohio, they did notice what is known as a capped atmosphere. In other words, there's a layer of warm air that exists, and it essentially provides a lid, or it prevents the rising updrafts from forming strong and severe thunderstorms. Now, an uncapped atmosphere, that is very volatile and something that produces widespread severe storms. That air is free to rise and then eventually condense and form clouds that can produce thunderstorms. So there is still some capping that is occurring evidently in central and southern Ohio. That's something we did pick up on with some of the earlier model data, but with a setup as potent as this, sometimes that cap can be overcome. The warm air, it's a lid, but it's not necessarily a lid that can't bubble off.
John, exactly right. When that lid blows, that's the ingredients for potentially some explosive thunderstorms. John, I got to throw this out there as well. Another kind of weather term. We're looking at an area called a triple point. All right, so follow me over here to the maps. That triple point is connected to this parent low pressure system. This is what's driving this overall weather situation. Now, this is an occluded front. It means it's where the cold front's actually overtaken the warm front. You still get some pretty vigorous lift in that part of the atmosphere. There's been widespread strong to severe storms up there across Wisconsin. Here's our triple point. It is where that occluded front meets the cold front and the warm front. This is going to be a very volatile zone, and it is directly over Chicagoland area where there's a lot of instability, a lot of storm energy in this area. So if these storms develop, and that's why we're on here on WTOL 11 Plus on YouTube Live, we're kind of breaking this down in real time, what we expect is going to be happening, because we are still several hours out from those storms arriving into northwest Ohio. But if we see these storms survive into northern Indiana, that's kind of a warning shot to say, heads up, those storms are breaking through that cap, and we could actually have some significant storm activity in our area. So let's pull up some of our weather data here. We're going to move this camera into what I call that triple point area. That is right now from about Champaign, Illinois, right up towards Chicago, where that next round of warmer, more humid air is surging in. Right across Lake Michigan in that warm front. I know you're feeling the higher levels of humidity. It's moving through northern Indiana, now into northwest Ohio, and that is something that is really going to kind of fire some of that instability. So let's look at the weather data, and I'm going to pull up some instability parameters. Again, how much energy is in the atmosphere right now. And John showed this, and this is like real-time data here. So here's the squall line, or storms that are developing across Indiana. The colors you're seeing right here, that's storm energy that I talked about that's sort of bubbling up under that cap in the atmosphere. So these storms that are now entering into eastern Illinois, once they make it into Indiana, this is a highly unstable atmosphere from Indianapolis north up toward South Bend over toward Fort Wayne. So these storms, they could turn fairly severe very quickly, and that's where our concern is. These are areas that could see some strong tornadoes, some large hail. There was a severe thunderstorm warning, I mentioned that back over here toward east central Illinois, that was warned for basically baseball-sized hail. Now, we're fortunate. We're not going to be expecting hail that large in our area, but it just kind of go to show how significant these storms can be when they are tracking, in this direction. So let me look a little bit closer at those storms. And again, here's our Doppler radar here. Same one that we're going to be using tonight as storms move into our area. There is an active tornado warning that is just south and west of Champaign, Illinois. It's actually been extended now. That tornado warning was in effect until 8 p.m. local time. That is Central Time over there. They've extended that. That is outside of Decatur, Illinois. There was a storm just north of that. And again, there's no active alerts in our area. As John and I told you, we're still a couple hours away from that. But this is the environment that these storms are developing in. We'll go ahead and move that camera a little bit more to the north, and we'll highlight where those storms are now. And this is up across just on the south end of the Chicago metro. These are some storms that are producing potentially considerable damage just outside of Chicago. Severe thunderstorm warnings. This does include all of Chicagoland down toward Joliet, Illinois, where these storms could be producing 60-mile-per-hour winds and some large hail. So let's bring this back closer to home. I want to show you what's going on here back locally at home, because again, it's quiet out. Maybe you're hearing the birds chirping. Things are calm. Things are still. We barely even have a cloud in the sky in some areas. Doppler radar is going to stay like this. Could even be another 90 minutes, 2 hours, perhaps even a little bit longer. These storms haven't even made it into Indiana. And John mentioned a little bit slower than some of the data had suggested that these storms would be moving into the area. But keep in mind, we do still have that risk of severe weather that will be possible. An enhanced risk, that is a level 3 out of 5 from I-75 and west. If you're east of I-75, don't get caught up in the specifics. You still have a risk of severe weather tonight that will be possible. Again, not a drop of rain right now. We're kind of getting ahead of what we're going to be expecting, and I'm going to get into that hour by hour here as we've got that warmer, humid feel across the region. Now 79 degrees, southeast winds that are being reported 5 miles per hour. We're in the upper 70s to near 80 degrees, and that warm, really unstable air, that extends all the way back into northern Indiana and east central Illinois, where we have that enhanced risk. And again, that's right at that triple point from that cold front, warm front, and eventually that occluded front. They've had widespread severe weather that has already showed up. In fact, if I go ahead and just throw that on there, here's the reported severe weather that has already happened. Some funnel clouds, some tornadoes, some very large hail. Up into Wisconsin, a good example of how much hail. Several reports of tornadoes. At one point, they had confirmed tornadoes that they were tracking with a debris ball on Doppler radar up across the state of Wisconsin. So these storms proving to pack a punch, and they're only going to be headed into a more unstable environment and atmosphere. So John showed something similar here. Timing of this one, they're going to be moving into northwest Ohio. May even have to push this back just a little bit. Here's Thursday, 11:30. So tonight, 11:30. If you're thinking, boy, I just wanted to get to bed early tonight, I want you to have multiple ways to have warnings. Here's that line of storms working across I-69, Fort Wayne. They're pushing into northwest Ohio, so they're already going to be there toward Williams and Defiance, Hillsdale, Lenawee County. They're going to continue their progress east. Tell you what, it's going to be a late night for John and I, probably a late night for you as well. They may not make it into the Toledo Metro till midnight is what some of the latest data is now suggesting, closer to midnight. We're still within that 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. time frame, right? And again, that storm energy out, John mentioned it. It is not going to wane. We're still going to have storm energy here in northwest Ohio, even as those storms do arrive. And those storms push through the Toledo Metro through midnight and into about 1 a.m. Finally going to be sliding east of I-75. And we'll be able to give you the all clear, perhaps in the Toledo Metro by 1:32 a.m., and it may be east of Toledo. Could even be significantly longer than that. It may take us till about 3 a.m. to the last of those storms. Clear Erie and Huron County and head toward Cleveland, where it's going to be a restless and unsettled night across much of northwest Ohio. So tonight, we're looking at temperatures that aren't going to fall much. We're going to stay in the 70s, even as that storm threat picks up. We'll probably kick that a little bit later after 11 in the Toledo Metro. It could even be closer to midnight that we get those storms into the area. You'll wake up, though, to a much quieter and calmer night. By morning, temperatures will dip back into the upper 60s. And speaking of quieter and calmer, we haven't had to talk about this yet, but we might as well take a peek toward the 10-day forecast before we get back over to meteorologist John Birchfield. Another round of storms that could be possible late Friday evening. Highs in the mid-80s. Still going to be a warm day, not nearly as humid. And that storm threat late Friday could pack some gusty winds with a few of those storms. Then we turn much colder beyond a cold front Saturday into Sunday. We dip back into the 60s this weekend. This doesn't look a lot like late May, does it? mid-60s at best. Could even get a day low 60s next week. And there will be rain chances Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, where those showers are going to keep us cool with that breeze coming right off the shores of Lake Erie. So you thought, boy, here we are in the middle of summer-like weather with storms and heat and humidity. We're just going to go ahead and flip that switch toward much cooler weather coming up in just a little bit. Jen, I want to send it back over to you. You and I know in a little bit are going to be getting prepared for WTOL11 on Fox 36 and WTOL11 News at 11. Give us that last kind of assessment before we end up wrapping things up for the night.
Yeah, overall, we're very close to seeing the effects of these storms looming to the west of us. And I do want to reiterate some of the impacts that we're expecting because this is going to be inconvenient timing for severe weather. And of course, this is going to be the type of setup that can produce a trifecta of impacts that we're expecting. So gusty straight line winds, I think that is still going to be the biggest threat as these storms develop and congeal into more of a linear structure. Right now in parts of Illinois, we are seeing what we call supercell thunderstorms. And those are the ones that are capable of producing the really large hailstones. But as they gradually become more linear, gusty straight line winds will be possible. 60 to even isolated 70-mile-an-hour winds will be possible. And that is something that can cause some significant damage. Now, really ahead of this line of storms, it's not overly breezy outside. In fact, it's rather still across the Toledo metro. The breeze may pick up a little bit ahead of these storms, especially west of Toledo. Hail is obviously going to be another big impact with hailstones up to 1 inch in diameter. Overall, though, I think the biggest hail threat is going to be more in the vicinity of northwest Indiana and western Michigan in areas like Grand Rapids. And the tornado threat, certainly something we're keeping a very close eye on. There have been a number of radar indicated and confirmed tornadoes so far. So will that threat maintain itself as they move into the Buckeye State and into southwest Michigan? We'll keep a very close eye on those storms. Again, the time frame 10 p.m. until 3 a.m. And we always send out the all clear on our free WTOL 11 weather app. And we'll be sure to send that your way as soon as we're in the clear from severe weather. Wind, hail, and tornado all going to be a potential risk out of these storms. And be sure to have alerts turned on and make sure the volume is up. I understand overnight severe weather can be a scary thing, but just know that if there are any weather alerts that are issued, we will send those straight to your device on the free WTOL 11 weather app. And the Storm Prediction Center still deliberating on a potential watch for our area. But as of now, there's no active weather alerts, but it's a rapidly changing situation, and an hour or two can make a big difference. So Chris and I keeping a very close eye on radar and a close eye on the latest correspondence with the National Weather Service as these storms roll in our direction. But we're going to be on air at 10 and 11, Chris, with the latest updates. And of course, WTOL 11 Plus, always a great resource to watch those newscasts if you're not able to tune in on air.
And John, I appreciate your expertise and your update on that. And we're going to get ready for some newscasts coming up here in just a few moments as we take a look at one last view of some of those storms that are going to be racing toward us. And again, I want you to have that free WTOL 11 weather app. You can scan the QR code right there to download. If you've been watching here on YouTube on WTOL 11 Plus, this is our pledge to keep you connected during active and uncertain times of severe weather. The storms that are fighting across Illinois. And again, remember, John and I said these are headed into an atmosphere that's going to be a little more unstable. If it could bust through that cap, we're going to have some strong storms that make their way into Indiana and eventually could be headed toward us in northwest Ohio. So we have that level 3 out of 5 enhanced risk, slight risk of severe storms east of I-75, but overall that weather impact tonight, I want you to be alert. Well after 10 p.m., we mentioned a little bit closer to 11 or midnight here in the Toledo metro. And we really appreciate you joining us here for early extended coverage on WTOL 11 Plus and on YouTube. For meteorologist John Birchfield, this is Chief Meteorologist Chris Vickers. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you on WTOL 11 on Fox 36 at 10 p.m. and on WTOL 11 at 11 p.m. Have a great, safe night.